my name's Corey, and I'm on a mission to help 1,000 people become passive investors. So if you'd like to be part of the mission, please like, subscribe, and share this video with someone today. All right, let's get started. Today, you're gonna learn the difference between active and passive real estate investing. Let's start by talking about what it's like to be an active investor. Think about being an active investor. It really starts with education. You've got to educate yourself on not only what type of asset are you going to purchase, meaning are you going to purchase a single family home? Are you going to purchase a duplex? Are you going to purchase a condo? You're going to purchase a fourplex, an apartment building. Even if you're getting into commercial real estate, do you know that asset class? And you have to start with the baseline. Hey, what do I know? And do I want to build on what I know, or do I want to learn something different? Those are some of the things I think you'd have to start out by understanding and knowing. And then once you've chosen that asset class, let's say it's single family homes, again, what do I know about single family homes? What do I know about the care and maintenance of them? Can I maintain them? Can I take care of them? Things like that. So those are some of the things you'll need to think about as an active investor if you're working in single family homes. Then you'll need to think of, how do I actually purchase this building? In order to be an investor, you got to make a purchase. And that's going to take many different entities coming together to make that deal actually happen. You're talking about lending, using a commercial lender or a hard money lender, where you're borrowing money from family, or using savings, or using funds from an IRA, whatever that might be. You got to put together a plan for financing that. And then once you've financed it, let's say you've gotten through all those hurdles of identifying the asset class, learning the asset class, and then getting the funding to take down that deal, or to sign that contract and you be the owner of that deal. Now, do you have a strategic business plan on how you're going to maintain the building, how you're going to have relationships with tenants? There's a lot of strategy that goes into it, even if you're just talking about a single family home. Now, with my company, we're dealing with apartment buildings. So often you're thinking about those things in a much deeper, higher level, because there's just so much more at stake. There's just so many more moving parts. So again, you have to really understand all the different moving parts of owning the asset. And then you have to implement. If something goes wrong on the property, what is your process for taking care of it? And you're also going to need to run those numbers, which is really important to make sure that you can afford that specific property. And one thing you want to make sure is that the revenue of that property is going to exceed your expenses. Those are some of the things that you think of right away with being an active investor. And we'll get into some of the pros and cons now, and really dig down deeper into what being an active investor looks like. All right, now we're going to get into some of the pros and cons of being an active investor. First and foremost, being an active investor is about taking on new challenges and really learning and being able to learn and to act at the same time, or things can go bad at your properties. So the first pro I would say is that it can be challenging and it can be fun, okay? So if you're the type of person like me that likes to be challenged, that likes to learn new things, being an active investor could definitely be for you. Number two, you're in 100% control, and it's gonna leverage not only the skills that you have now, but the skills that you've learned in the past, your skills in business, your skills in marketing, your skills in negotiation. As an investor, it's 100% on you. So your level of success is based on you. Yes, you can get help in many circumstances, but the way you use that help to be successful is, in the long run, how well you're going to do. Number three is personal development. This is a big pro for me. I'm really into personal development, reading primarily, but also listening to videos, listening to podcasts, talking to mentors, talking to new professionals about the industry, reading different publications. I think that's really key if you're going to be an active investor, and it's going to take time. And so as we go into the cons, number one con I would say is being an active investor is time consuming. If you already have a full-time job and you can't see yourself pulling your 40-hour week or more full-time job and doing all of the things that it takes to manage a property, or even before you even manage a property, getting the property, because there's hours and hours of work that take place just in the underwriting process. Once the owner of the property accepts your offer, there's a lot of work that goes into the lending side and making sure that you can not only afford that property, but that you can follow through with all the things that are necessary, give them all the documents that they need in order to finally transfer that ownership over to you. The number 2 con, I think, is it requires quite a bit of specialized skills. It really does. I know that a lot of people are interested in real estate, but if you don't have specialized skills in it, it could really increase your risk, because you're going to need to handle things, like I said before, like negotiating, understanding your market, understanding how to work with people and how to work with tenants. If that's something that you can't see yourself doing, then maybe being an active investor isn't for you, but that doesn't mean that you can't benefit from real estate. You just may need to be a passive investor or some other type of individual involved in real estate. And the last con is there is risk in all business deals, but in real estate specifically, there's risk that one, the seller is not telling you the full truth about the property. I feel like that can sometimes happen, and you can find that out during the due diligence process. But the largest risk in real estate is really the default risk. It's the foreclosure risk that people talk about. And as a real estate investor, your number one goal is to make sure that that property never ever goes into default, which is, like I said, your biggest risk. And if you're an active investor, you carry the weight of that risk 100%. Especially if you're not partnering with other people or having investors, you are taking on all of that risk by yourself. Now let's talk about what it looks like to be a passive investor. Now, being a passive investor in the true sense means that you're not dealing with the 3 T's that we talked about, which is tenants, toilets, and trash. You should be far away from many of those decisions that are needed to handle those things so that you can keep your legal structure as a passive investor, not involved in a lot of the management. So the things that I would recommend if you're ever thinking about being a passive investor is, 1, understanding the actual asset class that you'd be investing in. Just because you're not the active investor finding the property doesn't mean that you need to understand that specific asset class. And when I say understand, I mean you don't have to understand everything about it, but I'd say the most important thing for you to understand is what makes that specific asset class profitable. In the case of apartment buildings, being profitable means that you're bringing in more revenue than you have expenses. And that's obviously generally the case in any businesses, but understanding how you generate that revenue and what levers you can pull, how you can negotiate to increase that revenue and how you can decrease the revenue. I feel like those are really important things that you should understand on a base level. And if you're working with someone that is leading in an investment, that they should understand those at a much deeper level and be able to act on a business plan that helps you to increase that income and decrease those expenses. Another thing I think you should know about is understanding the market cycle. Right now, in our market cycle, housing prices as well as other commercial asset prices are at or above their all-time highs. There's lots of buyers in the market, and there's a lot of demand for real property, real assets. This has happened naturally, and it's been also spurred on by the pandemic as people have kind of rethought about where they're going to live. So understanding that market cycle is very important. Understanding when you should buy or when you should invest is important. If you can run some simple numbers to determine that, hey, maybe this property that someone is asking you to invest in, maybe it's overpriced. If you can assess that it's overpriced, at least you can ask the question, hey, do you think this is the right time for us to be investing right now, given the market cycle? That's going to make you not only look like a much smarter passive investor, but you will be a smarter passive investor because you'll learn more about that specific market cycle and the importance of purchasing a property at the right time. Next, what you'll have to do is, if you want to become a passive investor, is you're going to have to find an actual investment to invest in, because the thing about passive investments, typically in real estate and in smaller businesses, is that they're not available typically in the private market. There's something that you either need to know someone or have either a pre-existing relationship with someone, or just someone tells you about these investments, because they're typically held pretty close to the vest of the investors, and they let their kind of their circle and other individuals know about it, but it's not something that you can just go to E-Trade and just buy shares in somebody's single family home. The specifics of what I'm talking about and syndicating or group investing, that's not something that you can actually do, okay? Another thing I think that's really important is understanding the tax implications of being a passive investor. And although I'm pretty bullish on being a passive investor, I think there's a lot of tax savings, a lot of tax benefits. I think that you should take it upon yourself to go into the tax code, go to irs.gov and actually read what the tax code says about passive income, how it's taxed. You can look specifically about how much income you make and what your tax rate will be based on your own specific income. Yeah, I would say that those are the top things that a passive investor would need to master in order to even be able to get the ball rolling as a passive investor. Talk about some of the pros and cons of being a passive investor. Just then we talked about what it looks like to be a passive investor. Let's see what some of the good things about that are and some of the negative things are about that. I think the number one pro that I have is that being a passive investor actually saves me time. I don't need to manage the property. I don't need to deal with tenants. I don't need to have leases signed. All I need to do is be a part of an investment group wherein for a specific fee that is involved in the legal structure, that takes care of property manager, the asset manager, the individuals that run the day-to-day of operating that property. So I think that's pretty powerful. That's why that's my number one pro. My number two pro is it reduces your risk. If you're investing as a group, it really does reduce your risk because one, as a limited partner in a real estate transaction, your risk is limited to the amount of money invested in the deal. You're not subject to the default risk that I talked about earlier. So you don't have any of that default risk that your general partner that is running the deal will have. You do have the risk of losing your investment, but if you're invested in a good property that has good fundamentals, that risk can be offset by the business plan and the know-how of the operator. Make sure that the property that you're investing in performs well. And number three is diversification. So now you can invest in multiple properties in multiple geographic areas. I've done that. I've invested in the Southeast and also here in California, but I'm looking to invest down in the Southwest just to diversify different inflows and outflows in order to take advantage of many of the important factors in different geographic areas. Once I learn more about it, maybe I will, but for right now, I would like to invest with individuals who are investing in nice buildings that have good business plans in that area. All right, now let's talk about some of the cons or negative aspects of being a passive investor. Number one, it's a get-rich-slow scheme and not a get-rich-quick scheme, okay? Realistically, it's not a scheme at all, but it's not going to make you wealthy overnight. Okay, but if this is part of a strategic plan that you have, wherein maybe you have good income, or you know you're going to have good income, and you want to decrease your tax burden, this is definitely going to help you year one. That's something that it definitely should do if you're working with an operator that is doing things like cost segregation studies, which I'll talk about in another video later on. Number two is you'll have less control of the investment. Fundamentally, if you're a passive investment, you really will have less of the control. And if you're not a professional investor, that's probably better that you don't have 100% of the control, because hopefully the individual that you're partnering with is the one that knows that specific asset class, that specific business model better than you. So if you're okay with that, it's probably okay, but a lot of people aren't okay with not having 100% control. That's why so many people become active investors and really try to dip their feet in the water and see if they can take care of all those things themselves. Number three is that it's less liquid. Being a passive investor means that you are working with a group that may have a plan that could last for 2 years, but it could last for up to 7 to 10 years. And so you're going to have to be okay with allowing your money to sit in that investment for that period of time. And for some people, you don't have the funds to do that. Often I tell people, before you invest in a passive investment like this, you've got to be at a place where a lot of your basic needs financially are taken care of. Obviously food, housing, things like that. Maybe you even have a little bit more. But once you have food, housing, and a little bit more, definitely start thinking about, hey, what can I do with this excess funds that can really help me to either work less, pay less in taxes, if those are some of your goals. I'd like to let you know that I'm not a CPA or an attorney, so before you act on any information from this video, please consult your financial and legal experts. Thank you for watching my video, and if you felt like it was helpful, please take the time right now to like it, subscribe, and share it with someone that you think it might be helpful for. Thanks again. See you next time.